Walk with me for a moment. Everybody, close your eyes. I know you just started a video and you want to see my sweet, sweet ears, but I need you to trust me for a moment and close your eyes. Picture yourself holding a game controller. Imagine yourself moving your character forward with the game controller. How'd you do it? Did you move the joystick? That makes sense. That's common. I get it. Go ahead. Push that joystick forward again. Stupid, you fell on your face, ha! Is it good when video games are bad? Okay, you know what? This title might be a little bit misleading. None of the games I'm going to talk about today are bad games, and specifically not the one I want to focus most on, Baby Steps. This isn't a review, but if it was, I would tell you that Baby Steps is well worth the $20 price tag, if not way more. It's an awesome game. My wife Shannon, her sister Mallory, and I have been playing it every night, and it's gotten to the point where we're all just waiting for the moment we get to pick up the controller and walk as Nate again. So then back to the title. What I mean when I say Baby Steps is bad, what I'm talking about is the idea of friction. Not to be confused with difficulty or punishment, although they share some similarities, especially in the emotional realm. I think friction can best be described as one of the most powerful forces pushing against a player playing a video game. However, something that Baby Steps helped me realize is that friction can actually be intentionally and carefully added to a game to enhance instead of limit the experience for a player. So let's I am Lord Voldemort these letters around real quick. That's better. Warning that I feel like I should say off the bat. If you're gonna play Baby Steps, just know it hangs dong quite a bit, more than any game I've ever seen in my life. I'm obviously not gonna show you any of that, but if that's something that bothers you, maybe steer away from this game. It never felt like it was a problem to me, but everybody's different, so I wanted to clarify that off the bat. To get to the bottom of the Baby Steps mountain, let's roll the clocks back to 2006. Twitter's about to be launched, and you just walked out of the midnight release of the biggest movie of all time, The Da Vinci Code. The eventual king of friction, Bennett Foddy, is teaching himself how to program and design video games while he's working on his dissertation in philosophy. Something that will come through in each and every one of his games. He made one game that came out a year later called Too Many Ninjas that was very controls focused, but the Foddian volcano really erupted when QWOP came out in 2008. The premise of the game is to make a track star run as fast and as far as possible, which sounds really simple. I promise you it's anything but. In a pattern you're going to see in a lot of these games, difficult controls as intentional friction is something Bennett Foddy loves. The QWOP name reflects the buttons you need to press on your keyboard to make the track star run. Q and W for the thighs, and O and P for the calves. QWOP partially blew up because it was the kind of game somebody would find, show to their friends, and they would all take turns trying to see if they could figure out how to do a good job. I wasn't a part of the craze when the game first came out, but it was such a big internet moment that the game was actually added to the MoMA in New York City for a little bit as its own exhibit. Over the next couple years, he created a couple sequels to QWOP, GIRP in 2011 and then CLOP in 2012. GIRP was the rock climbing equivalent, and then CLOP was the unicorn running one, I guess? Side note number one. All of these browser games are all still available and very fun to play, so I'll link them in the description down below. You should check them out. That motorcycle's too loud. The game that got my attention though was Getting Over It with Bennett Foddy in 2017. In a vein you'll come to recognize as similar to Baby Steps, the premise of the game is you're a guy trying to get up a mountain. There's a huge caveat though. Your character is a man trapped in a cauldron, just like the pot-dwelling philosopher Diogenes. Why do you think I'm in a cauldron right now? And to add to that equation, the only way to move yourself around is by swinging a big hammer and using the head of the hammer as leverage. Also, the hammer is controlled by moving your mouse around. There are some big differences between Getting Over It and the QWOP saga, but the main thing that I think separates the two is that Getting Over It has a real idea of the setting. In Getting Over It, you don't learn much about the Diogenes-style main character, but with Bennett Foddy really means with Bennett Foddy. Foddy's voice starts talking to you early on, giving you some advice, some quotes, and some just random information. There are no checkpoints, and it's really easy to mess up a jump and lose a metric butt-ton of progress. And sometimes the narration pairs perfectly with these moments.
This thing that we call failure is not the falling down, but the staying down. Mary Pickford.
Similar to the ideal QWOP experience where you're sitting around with a group of friends all trying this, I showed this to a variety of friends, gamers and non-gamers alike, and every single person I showed it to had a combination of two emotions: frustration and intrigue. It's really easy to explain because all you need to do is move the mouse, but similarly to QWOP, it's way harder to actually execute on. However, the world and everything involved provides such a level of intrigue that you just want to keep playing. Plus, there's a certain Hollow Knight-esque aspect to the mechanics that make it feel like every time you fall, you know exactly what you feel like you should try next the next time you're climbing up the mountain. The next big game he worked on was Ape Escape. Wait, not that. Ape Out, actually. Yeah, that's the one. As far as I can tell from our reliable friend Wikipedia, Ape Out is the first game where he collaborated with friends Gabe Kazio and Maxi Bosch. If I'm pronouncing these names wrong, please message me in the comments. Now, Ape Out is one of the most stylish games I've ever played, with the funkiest music and the coolest art and aesthetic. But as far as I can tell, this game really feels like a Kuzio brainchild that Foddy and Bosch helped style, as opposed to another game in the Foddian arsenal of addictive friction. After that, he made a cool game called Zipper on the Playdate, which is a device I don't have, so I have no idea if Zipper is good, but I will say, it looks dope as hell. Finally though, the latest game on his impressive but bizarre resume is 2025's Baby Steps, another collaboration with Kuzio and Bosch. And as much as it is a collaboration led by three extremely talented game developers, at least thematically it aligns most with Foddy's other games. In an interview with Engadget about the development, Bosch even said, "I think it started to become a lot clearer in everyone's minds when it started to take on aspects of Bennett's work. That being said, it's also a much bigger ordeal than the last one, Getting Over It. Getting Over It is a side-scroller with a clear path laid out in front of you. The goal is relatively clear, and the situation is pretty obvious. Baby Steps is the opposite. There's no clear path, your goal is pretty unclear, and the story waits to reveal itself throughout the game." Side note number 2, I have to say it, Nate's caked up. He's got an absolute dumper. Try not to let it distract you too much. The first time you boot it up, the game starts and you're Nate. Presumably in your parents' basement, you can overhear your parents arguing upstairs.
Are you bringing him food again?
Not right now.
Talked about this.
Not right now.
You are
okay?
literally killing him with these pizzas.
You just want to throw him out of the street?
No,
Is that what you
I'm
want?
not. He's 35.
live on the
I
street?
want him to have some kind of discipline. Maybe if you can hear my voice, I want you to come on.
So you pick up the TV remote and are immediately teleported to the middle of a pond deep in the forest. And thus, Baby Steps begins. Okay, I bet you thought I was forgetting about our title. No, not that one yet. Friction Good. Now, most games introduce friction gradually. Even when you're thinking of difficult or punishing games like Dark Souls, they're hard pretty quickly, but it still takes a little bit of tutorial and walkthrough before you encounter the first enemy that you have any real trouble or friction with. Baby Steps does not do that. You do not get to experience the friction in Baby Steps. You encounter the friction with the first movement of your game controller. The only guidance you're given is to move the left joystick forward, and right when you do that, you fall flat on your face. Oh, that's right, I remember. This game had Bennett Foddy involved. So what are the funky controls? To move Nate, you have to press the left trigger to pick up his left leg and the right trigger to pick up his right leg. Then you move whatever leg you have picked up forward or backward or around wherever you want with the left joystick. A lot of the footage you've seen so far is me having played the game quite a bit, so I'd gotten a decent amount better at it, but the first time you play, you feel kind of insane. Every step feels like your brain isn't connected to your hands and your hands aren't connected to the controller. And then it doesn't help that sometimes it feels like Nate falls so far and so slowly, and sometimes it feels like he's just deciding to fall on his own. But these controls and these rules work in such a way that you want to keep going. Something about each environmental puzzle feels like getting over it, where once you fall or once you stumble, you have an idea on how you can hypothetically try a little bit better next time, or be a little bit more careful and get past it next time. And that feeling is what drives you to want to try again. Yes, it can get really frustrating. I myself cursed at Nate quite a few times playing through this game. He falls too far, he falls all the time, and if you hold your leg up for too long, he starts to wobble and falls. But overall, you want to get back up and you want to try again. Like I was saying before, Shannon and Mallory were also playing this game, and while I love them both dearly, neither of them are gamers. They were trying again over and over and over again. So clearly there's something here that inspires perseverance. Side note number 3. While we were playing the game, Shannon and Mallory came up with a fun little jingle that went something like, baby steps, baby steps. When I complimented them on their delightful little jingle, they roasted me for not knowing it was an Olivia Dean song. I've since heard the song and yeah, certified banger. Thanks for the soundtrack to our playthrough, Liv. As you explore a world that gets more and more challenging the further you go, the bizarre story starts to reveal itself. And brother, it gets really bizarre.
Oh my God, finally a whole banana. Smells so good.
I want to say it reminds me of Twin Peaks, but I think that's just me trying to sound smart. Really what it has in common is that I vaguely understand the dialogue and growth of the main character while having no idea what's going on with the side characters. I mean, there's a group of donkeys only wearing shirts partying every night, drinking what I believe is breast milk. But Nate's character is easy to parse. He's a nervous guy who's frozen by every decision and doesn't want to hypothetically inconvenience anybody to the point where he's even afraid to ask where the bathroom is. He's been teleported to an unknown and scary land after hearing a conversation that was frankly uncomfortable. Now, if you took all of the character and setting stuff away and just had a guy who walked with these controls, I think you would give up pretty quickly. At one point, I actually was playing and switched over to play Dark Souls for a little bit, and my immediate first thought was, wait, I can just move the joystick to walk? I was legitimately excited, but I was only excited because my brain had been rewired to think, left leg, left trigger, right trigger, left leg, left trigger, right trigger, left leg, left trigger, right leg, right trigger. But since those controls and ragdoll mechanics are paired with this character in this context, the friction of the controls syncs perfectly. He doesn't know what he's doing or where he's going, and you don't know what you're doing and where you're going. The beauty of it beyond that, though, is that the game makes you learn and grow together. To visualize it properly, I thought it was chart time, baby. So let's put on the chart glasses and see what we've got going on. With the x-axis being time and the y-axis being confidence, you can see that through the story, Nate grows bolder and more confident throughout the whole game. In a pretty incredible display of symmetry, you, the player, also become more and more confident the further up this mountain you go. It's not that the friction of the difficulty of the controls alleviates throughout the game. In fact, I think the obstacles in the landscape get more and more complex and difficult the further you go. But you as a player are able to get your muscle memory and thinking to a spot where you are moving with Nate as opposed to against him. There are a lot of games that struggle with ludonarrative dissonance, which is, yes, a very pretentious sounding word. But basically what it describes is the constant tension between what makes a game fun and the narrative of the character you're portraying. The most common example of this kind of dissonance that I've seen is when the character is trying to be a good person and they're murking everyone they see. Side note number 4. This term was actually coined in a review about BioShock, so probably should have talked about that in my BioShock video. While it was on the Wikipedia for ludonarrative dissonance, though, it continued onto the idea of ludonarrative consistency, where it reads, ludonarrative consistency can be considered the use of gameplay mechanics to positively reinforce the narrative. An example could be deliberate jank or difficult controls in order to simulate states like being drunk or confused. Hey, that's exactly what happens with baby steps. The team behind Baby Steps uses the concept of controls so tedious, it incorporates friction as a tool to not only enforce but enhance a compelling story, and on top of that, to make a fun puzzle game where you want to find every tedious little Easter egg. Honestly, after beating the game, all I wanted to do was start over immediately. So to answer the question from before, I think the answer is yes. Friction good. I will confess we didn't beat the man breaker, we just climbed the stairs. That being said, maybe I'll come back and try it again later. It is the kind of pain I absolutely love. Thanks for watching. If you liked this kind of game analysis, please subscribe. And if you can think of other examples of friction used intentionally like this in video games, shout them out in the comments below. I'm Old Jackson Boy, and I'll catch you next time.